Nuri Muhammad, welcome back. I Never Knew TV, right? It's always a blessing to link up with you.
Man, it's my honor and my privilege to be on this great platform and share space and time with you and the brothers once again.
A serious thing, right? We're going to get right into it. I want to talk about a brilliant statement made by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan during one of his speeches
Yes.
when he said, love anticipates need, right? Can you explain how the statement applies to all aspects of life?
Well, of course, in the context of the minister speaking on this particular subject or statement, love anticipates need, he was angling on the way a husband should treat their wife and the way a wife should treat their husband. However, when you unpack the variables of the scripture, especially in the biblical context, there are four types of love that are mentioned in the scripture. And they break it down and use Greek terms to label them. They call it agape, that's the unconditional love of God. Storgos, which is family love. And eros, which is where the word erotic comes from. This is spousal love that is directed from a wife to a husband, husband to a wife. And then phile. They call Philadelphia the city of brotherly love, because phile represents brotherly love. So when you look at these four categories of love that are outlined in Scripture, agape, the love for God, unconditional love for God, the estorgos, which is the love for your family, eros, love for your mate, phile, love for your brothers and sisters that are not of the blood but are of your spirit. Then that principle of love anticipating need can be universally applied, not just from a wife to a husband or a husband to a wife, but it should also be the spirit that we operate in as we move and maneuver through the world. How do we treat our cousins? How do we treat our aunts? How do we treat our brothers and sisters of the same struggle? How do we treat the spouses and etc.? So it can be transposed and used in all categories, but it means that if love anticipates need, then whenever someone loves someone, the person they love doesn't have to ask, request, or reach out to. When you anticipate need with love, you're studying that object of your affection and you're trying to give them what they need, what they want. You're trying to fulfill some aspect of their life without them having to say a word. And that can be universally applied for all categories of love that are mentioned in the biblical context. Also, too, Brother Len, this is something that really has to be looked into deeper. The minister has told us that if you take the Holy Quran, the word love only appears in the Holy Quran 47 times. He said, however, there's another word that Allah uses for love that gives us a description to prove to us whether or not we really love what we say we love. And he said the word that Allah uses in the Holy Quran for love is duty. And the word duty appears 190 times. This means that love is not a feeling. Love is a function. So if I say I love something, I can't stop because I got a warm feeling in my heart towards you. If I really love you, that warm feeling isn't the finish line, that's the start line. But the activity of carrying out a function, demonstrating through actions that I love you by keeping my duty to you, proves that I really love, not just a feeling, but a function.
And there's another aspect I wanted to touch on with this powerful statement, love anticipates need, love of self. And when you talk about what you just spoke about, it all applies in regards to having a duty to yourself.
Well, you know, the scripture says this: what would it profit a man if he gained the whole world and lost his own soul? So at the end of the day, we are not going to be able to be of any value to anything if we are of no value to a self. I remember that a Caucasian, older Caucasian came up to me, and he shook my hand, and in my hand he pressed some $100 bills into my hand. And he said this: he said, "Brother Nuri, I want you to know that there's a lot of people that love you and draw strength from you that you may not even know I'm one of them." He said, "However, we that love you, we're watching you from the outside in, and you're always doing a lot for other people." He said, "I just want to caution you that you can't be all things to all people if you're nothing to yourself." I said, wow. That stuck with me for the years after he made the statement. And Jesus told us when he said this, he said, on these two hang all the laws and all the prophets. These two commandments I give unto you this day. He said, love God with all your heart, mind, your soul, your strength. And the second one is likened unto it, that you love your brother or love your neighbor as you love yourself. Even though it's two commandments, there's three loves in the two commandments. It's the love of the God. It's the love of your brother, your sister, or your neighbor. But you love your brother or your sister or your neighbor how? As you love yourself. So to anticipate the need of self would mean that you would have to have a knowledge of self. Knowledge of self is what produces love for self. And when you love yourself, you start doing for yourself. And since your brother, you're my brother, Brother Linton, you're my brother, Brother Dan. So if you're my brother, the base word of brother is other, you're my other self. So when I know me and love me and I'm doing right by me, I'm going to treat my other me the same way. But if I have no knowledge of self, how will I ever love myself? And if I don't love myself, how am I going to do right for myself? And if I'm not doing right by me, then my brother don't stand a chance. So you are correct, Brother Linton, to point that out. It is an imperative that you have a knowledge of self. And when you break down what we are a tripart being. We are mind, we are body, and we are spirit or soul. So when you get through the checklist of what does it take to have a sound mind, a sound body, and a spirit or a soul that is congruent and in harmony with the God that gave me that soul. Make that list of things that we must do, and that list is anticipating the need. Start carrying it into practice, and the love of self will be present, and the love from self will spread to all of those other categories.
And as one, you brought something up, I just want to ask, when did you find the balance in taking care of yourself and serving? Where did you find that balance? Because I notice people that do service, they kind of go overboard where they neglect themselves and they go too far into the service. But I take it you found that balance. But when did you find that balance?
Well, I'm striving. I like to think that I am, and I've been blessed, of course, to be able to have a template in front of me for what I do, and that prototype that shows me a process to help me to perform, to be what I'm supposed to be, is the man that taught me everything that I know and is the example of the man I hope to one day become. That's the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So I'm blessed to have him as an example, and I watch and observe his word and his way. And then, of course, he always drops jewels and nuggets of advice, and I strive to hold on to them. So I exercise every day. I try to do And my goal is to do an hour a day of cardio with some weight training. I try to do that 6 days out of the week. And I marry study inside of that. So I'm not running or on the Stairmaster or the elliptical or under the weight pile with music coming through my AirPods. I'm listening to the lectures, audiobooks. I'm taking notes. I'm quizzing myself throughout the day. So that habit of praying in the morning, I call that my exorcise regimen, getting them demons out. Then I get out there and Muhammad got the devil on the run. I get out there and run and get the devil on the run. That's my exercise. And then feed my mind the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of a spiritual nature and empirical knowledge every day. And because of that, I think that regimen, I learned it from the minister. He said exercise at least 30 minutes a day. And he taught us that knowledge equalizes the pressure of the stress from the outside world on us. And he said it takes 1 hour a day of study to be able to have the adequate amount of inspiration within, that whenever you exhale spiritually, you can keep the pressure off of you. So we have 14.7 pounds of atmospheric pressure per square inch of the human body right now, but we don't implode. And if you take a square inch and you multiply that by 14.7 and look at how many square inches are around the human body, this is hundreds of thousands of pounds of pressure coming from the outside in, but we don't implode. Why? Because we have the ability through our nostrils and our mouth to exhale. And because we can push more force from within than the force that's coming from without, we operate in the world with a level of peace and harmony, and we don't even feel the pressure that we are under. Well, for every physical law in nature, there is a spiritual counterpart. There's pressures of the world that are always on us. There's stresses of the world that are always on us. So what can we do to equalize the 14.7 pounds of spiritual, mental, atmospheric pressure coming upon us? We have to have enough inspiration that when we exhale or exhale the wisdom, exhale what we know, that we can check and put in balance the pressure from the outside world. So that's my regimen. I exorcise, then exercise, and try to fill my mind up with knowledge of a spiritual nature and empirical knowledge, quiz myself throughout the day, and of course, plan my work and work my plan. And I do a checklist in the afternoon. What is it that you said you wanted to get done today? All right, how you looking? And this is a little hack that I had to put on myself. I used to keep a to-do list, and then I started making a daily agenda, but it didn't seem to have enough snap. Just the term to-do list and daily agenda didn't have enough urgency on it for me. So I took the daily agenda, crossed out to-do list. Now I put at the list every day my battle plan. And by going at the day with not a to-do list or a daily agenda, but a battle plan, it brings a military mind to the objectives that are in front of me. So I'm almost kind of excited about the goals or the items on the list, because every time I knock one out, it's like me getting ready. I'm defeating the enemy that's rising against me. And I don't want to just win the battles. I want to win the war. So I got these daily missions. Those are the goals. Today's success is called my battle. And at the end of the week, if I want to win the war, I got to make sure that all those missions that I put out each day and every day, I completed the battle plan. And then I can feel successful at the end of the week. So that's kind of my little self-care regimen that keeps me, I believe, balanced and not to the point where I'm too tired to be what I'm supposed to be for other categories of life other than just the work of the resurrection of our people.
What are some of the things or practices you notice for a person to remove the poverty of thoughts from their mind?
Well, that's a very good way of approaching it because, some people are so poor that all they have is money. You didn't catch that. Some people are so poor that all they have is money.
Facts.
So when you don't have good relationships, when you don't have harmony and balance with others, when you don't have a sense of purpose, when what you do is hurting people for personal gain, not helping people, if what you do to make change does not make change, I don't care how many dollar signs or commas you have in your bank account, if all you have is money and you don't have good relations with your family, a connection to God and your purpose, and you are doing right to earn your money, then at the end of the day, you are much poorer than what you think you are. So that's a good concept to look at. However, your pocket does affect your mind. So if the spirit or attitude or disposition of a person doesn't have, or money doesn't have any impact on it, why in 1929, whenever the American economy collapsed and the stock market crashed, why do they call it the Great Depression? It's because there is somewhat of a connection to our attitude and spirit and disposition and the resources we have at our disposal. If the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said it like this, he said, heaven and hell are not places. In one writing, he said, heaven and hell are states of mind. In another place, he said, heaven and hell are a state of being. And in another place, he said, it's a condition of life. You break that down, state of mind is a heaven and a hell. This means that how we think can determine whether we're in heaven or whether we're in hell. State of being, what is the health status? Are we operating at maximum ability for what self can achieve? And then condition of life means, where do we live? How do we live? What do we have? That's what he called heaven and hell. And we knew that heaven and hell wasn't something we was going to die and go and float away and get after we were dead by common sense. When you don't have no air conditioning in the summertime, what do we say? Man, I'm hot as hell right now. Well, look, opposite extreme, when you don't have no heat in the wintertime. Man, I'm cold as hell right now. You ain't dead. You just environment change, condition of life. You don't have no money in your pocket, you broke as hell. This is what we say. You think you're going to die and float away one day, guess what? You crazy as hell. No. Jesus said the kingdom of God is within you. The kingdom of heaven is within you. See, if a person is manifesting their full athletic ability, they're in a physical heaven. But a person paralyzed from the neck down is in a physical hell. Someone that has a newborn baby is in an emotional heaven, but when someone you love dies, that's an emotional hell. If you don't know how to read or write, you're in a mental hell. But if you have knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, you are in a mental heaven. You didn't have to die to get these. These are two opposite extremes that exist right here, right now. It's a state of mind, state of being. It's a condition of life. So when it comes to the poverty of thought, when you attach those negative thought processes called envy, jealousy, gossip, do you know that it takes more energy to process a negative thought than it does to process a positive thought? Look at the difference whenever you are in an environment where there's joy and laughter. you feel lighter, and you leave with energy.
Facts.
But when you go to an environment where the people are negative or sad or talking down, you leave zapped.
Drain your energy, man.
Drain. So the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said this. He said there are levels of conversation. Levels of conversation. He said the highest level of conversation is when you are discussing what God revealed to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. When you are talking the wisdom of God, that wisdom, that knowledge, that conversation has the highest electrical charge in it, and it gives you power to achieve. He said, but there is a level of conversation that is so low, not only does it not give you energy, it actually will take energy from you. And he said that's gossiping. That's backbiting. That's talking negative or down or about other people. The minute that we engage in conversations that are negative and we are discussing what other people are or what we speculate or what rumor we heard, the minute that we're involved in any communication that does not edify self, God, or others, we're involved in a level of conversation that you could call the poverty of thought and the poverty of speech. Because what does it mean to have poverty? It means to be without. Well, if gossip and negative communication doesn't give energy but takes away from you, then it's making you poorer in spirit and poorer in energy. So it does produce poverty on a spiritual level. So that's a good concept that we need to dive a little deeper into and be more conscious of making sure that our spiritual account with the Lord of the worlds and the universe we live in, that it is not in the negative. We don't want to need to use an idea and we try to use it and it come back NSF, stamped on it, insufficient funds, insufficient faith. So that's a great concept to unpack. And some of the secret is this. It's really simple. In physics, they say that for every action in the universe, there is in nature its equal and its opposite reaction. So all I have to do is take whatever action that I don't like and find in nature what is the equal and the opposite reaction to it, and began to engage in practicing the equal and the opposite reaction to the negative action. And before long, the negative will cease to exist. So if you are selfish, that's negative. What's the equal and opposite reaction of being selfish? Being charitable. If you are a pessimistic, meaning you always see the negative, what's the equal and opposite reaction? I have to start becoming more optimistic. And it's something that if you look at the word optimistic, and if you were going to get some glasses, you would go to someone called an optometrist. The optometrist is helping you to see correctly. But the word optimist and optometrist come from the same word. Optimist is thinking and seeing things positive. The optometrist helps you see things correctly. Well, if they both come from the same root word, that's telling us that you see things correctly when you see things positive. So all it takes is really engaging in the equal and the opposite reaction and being intentional and conscious about it. We say it from the Quran this, that if I had chose a pastime from ourselves, then nay, we would have chosen this. We hurl truth at falsehood, and it knocks out its brains. So the more positive you put in, two things cannot occupy the same space at the same time. Negative has to go. The more edification, the more complimenting, the more praising and the looking at the good in others, gossip has to go. So we can come up out of poverty with that, those principles employed, the spiritual poverty and the financial poverty, if we really understand it.
Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said you should never get divorced before being married for at least 3 years, right? Why do you believe the minister recommends 3 years before even considering a divorce? I have my theory, but I want to hear your theory.
Well, that's a great, he lifted this principle in a series that he did called How to Give Birth to a God, and another message on the keys of successful marriage from 1983.
Classic. Sorry to cut you, Nuri. I just want to say that is a classic. Like, I give that to everybody that gets married, to tell you the truth. I can't lie to you, you know? It's helped me. It like really helped me.
It's so rich. Yeah. It's so rich in it. It's very rich. And this was a part of a series he was doing at that time, even before we were in Mosque Mariam from the Final Call building. But in it, he says that you should not, he talked about divorce in the first year of marriage. He said, no, you shouldn't be talking about divorce in the second or the third year. He said, use that time to actually learn what you have gotten yourself into. Facts. Look at that. So one of the principles that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave us as we enter into a relationship, he said this. He said that try not to have any children for the first 2 years of marriage. Let those first 2 years is what? That's for you and your mate to learn each other and to give each other that quality time that is non-distracted, where you all are focused solely on one another. I said, man, most people have a honeymoon for a week after they get married. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he's lightweight saying that it's all right to have you a 2-year honeymoon. Getting to know each other so that you can build that kind of bond. See, what happens anytime when children come into the equation, the mother has to be mother more than she's going to be wife. And once the children demand that attention from the mother, she has less energy and attention that she can give to the husband. So those first 3 years, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, he said they are like the first trimester of a baby forming in the womb. He said they're the first 3 months of a baby developing in the womb is the most difficult and the most challenging time of the development of a child. Likewise, the first 3 years of marriage are the same. So those 3 years, like those 3 months for the baby, is a time when the systems are being developed and all the parts are being put into place to make sure the organism that comes out of the womb is equipped to handle the world. So it is in a marriage. The first 3 years, we're developing our regimen, our systems, our habits. We're learning each other. We're learning the red buttons that we shouldn't push. We're learning the green buttons that we should push. And if we can just focus for those first 3 years and really allow that to be the time we climb that learning curve, where we can really get to know each other, then after the 3, listen to what the minister said. He said, if you can make it through the first 3 years, you more than likely can make it for the rest of your life. So these are very critical time. It's a very critical time in the development and the growing of the love that 2 people have come together to do. You don't really know someone until you live with them. And once you make that commitment and you say, through rich or poor, better or worse, in sickness and in health, till, it didn't say till I don't feel like I used to feel, until you give me the attention you used to. No, until death do us part. So when we put our word out there, in Islam, as taught by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we have a lesson 1, and there's a question and answer 11, where Master Fard Muhammad, the teacher of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, is quizzing his servant, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, to see how he's grasping the teachings. And listen to the question. Have you not learned that your word shall be bond, regardless to whom or what? And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad answers, yes, sir. My word is my bond, and bond is life. Listen to this. This is the highest level of commitment you could ever find from a human being. My word is my bond, and bond is life, and I shall give my life before my word shall fail. Well, if your word is going to be bond, regardless to whom or what, anybody on the planet is categorized as a whom, and any situation or circumstance that could ever show up in life is a what? So there's no situation, there's no circumstance, and there's no person in the outside world or inside my home that is going to stop me from making my word bond. I will only violate my word if I'm dead. And because we don't go in to commitment in marriage or commitment to what we do with that level of commitment, that my word is bond, bond is life, and I'll give my life before my word shall fail, divorce is an easy thing to talk about and to do, because we're not really thinking richer or poor, better or worse, sickness and health, till death do us part, and making our word bond. And that's why we see so many people give in and give up so quick. But it didn't used to be like this, Brother Lynn. They did a study, McKinley Irving Family Law did a study where they looked at the statistics of black people in America in 1867. This is just 2 years up from Emancipation Proclamation. And they found that in 1867, that 90% of all adults that were of marriage age were married. And they had a near 100% success ratio. I'm sure they went through the vicissitudes of life, struggle and trial back then, especially on the economic front. 2 years up from slavery and Jim Crow with black codes and black laws. I know their money wasn't right. But in spite of all the hell they were catching, black women and black men, 90% of them that could be married were married, and almost 100% of them made it till death do them part. Now you got, right now, only a 40% marriage ratio out of black people getting married, and we have a 75% divorce rate on top of that. So there was something a little bit different about the level of commitment and word we gave back then that we need to go back and revisit the principles they operated on.
I feel we live in a commitmentless society, right? And all right, so I heard you say, I believe it's for one of your books, please correct me, right? For one of your books, you did a lot of research in regards to married couples, seeing why they were married so long.
Yes.
All right. And the thing you found was friendship is the source of the marriage. Now, in our modern times, it's like friendship is not a thing and commitment is not a thing. So I think those two things kind of lead into this lack of long-term relationships. Because friendship is like, I'm not going to say it's obsolete, but friendship in the younger generation is a very tricky thing nowadays. You know, they don't have friends. They don't have long-term friends. They're not committed to friends.
Well, that's an impediment, and again, of course, what happened was there was it was in 2012. The Today Show reported a study where the guests on the show had went all over the world, and they were interviewing couples that were, look at this, married for 65 plus years and still happily married. And when they went all over the world from various different nationalities of people, and they interviewed them, and then they came back and looked at the commonality among all of these happily married for 65 plus years all around the world, they came to the conclusion that the longevity ingredient that had them together and still happily married was that they all were friends with one another. So the conclusion was that friendship is the longevity ingredient of marriage, being friends. And to be a friend means that not only do you love your mate, but you like them. You enjoy their company. They make you laugh. You make them laugh. They make you happy. You make them happy. And let me tell you something about friends. Whenever you've got friends, friendship is better than the car you drive, the house you live in. It's better than the restaurants that you can go, the trips you can take. There's nothing of this material world that can breathe life into a relationship better than friendship can. When we were growing up, we didn't care how cold it was. We would be on the porch as long as we was with our friends. When we were real young, we used to make clubhouses in people's yard under bushes with TVs that didn't even have no power to it, that didn't work. We'd be out there in the rain, in the cold, bugs crawling all over us, getting bit by mosquitoes. We didn't want to go back in the house. Why? Because I'm with my friends. It's something about friendship that is very attractive, and it waters the soul. So whenever you have that longevity ingredient where the person that you're married to, you don't just love, you also like being around them, like their conversations, like the way that they are, like their personality. When you got that love and like mixed together, you got friendship. And when you got friendship, you have the longevity ingredient. And it does, Brother Lennon, it does take commitment sometime to get to that point, to grow to the point where this person now has officially become not just your friend, but your best friend. There was something you asked earlier about keeping balance. And I can say that, you know, like anybody else, you don't always feel like doing what you're supposed to do. You don't always feel like doing what's right. You don't always feel like doing what's best at that moment. But feelings are not facts. Facts are facts. And so there are two principles and words that I use to help check my own stinking thinking. These are psychological weapons that I try to use inside of my mind on that devil within here, that brown germ, that yang, that bad wolf that exists in my own consciousness, to put at bay the Satan of self. And that is discipline and commitment. Discipline, I always tell myself, discipline is doing what you should do when you should do it, whether you feel like doing it or not. And commitment is the ability to maintain an action long after the excitement has worn off. So I don't have to be excited about it anymore. I'm committed to it, so I'm going to do it anyway. I don't have to feel like doing it because I got discipline. I'm going to do what I should do when I should do it, whether I feel like doing it or not. And if we can operate and use those two principles to govern our mind, we'll find that you don't have to wait to feel good to do good. You can do good and make yourself feel good. You don't have to sit around and wait for everything to be right and for the Spirit to move you. No, you can start moving the Spirit whenever you operate with commitment and discipline. So those are two principles that are very important. In Islam, when we perform a wedding, there's a verse that is mandatory that we read in order for it to be considered a Muslim ceremony. It's found in Surah 4, verse 1. And listen to what it says. O people, keep your duty to your Lord, who created you and your mate of a single essence. Keep your duty to Allah, by whom you demand one of another your rights and the ties of relationship. Look at that. This verse doesn't talk anything about what a man does for a woman or a woman does for a man. It says, keep your duty to your Lord, and then repeats it again, keep your duty to Allah. What do you get out of it? You get your rights from one another. What do you get out of it? You get the ties of relationship. This means, see, what does a tie do? A tie is something that holds two things together. There's a bonding agent for everything that exists in creation, and the bonding agent or the adhesive that you use to keep objects together is based on its nature. You use a different adhesive or bonding agent to keep wood with wood. You use a different bonding agent to keep plastic with plastic. If you want metal to be bonded with other metal, welding has to take place. You can't use the bonding agent for wood on plastic or the bonding agent for plastic on metal. Depending on its nature will determine what kind of bonding agent you must use. Well, God is telling us that the bonding agent, the adhesive, or the glue that keeps a man and a woman together is not really so much what you do for each other. It's your duty to your God. So that commitment that we're looking for starts with commitment to the Supreme Being, to his laws, to his statute, to his commandments, to his word and his way. And then once we commit to him, it becomes much easier for us to remain committed to our spouses, to our purpose, to our vision, to our business that we're trying to get off the ground. All of those things become an easy thing because we've been practicing commitment on the highest level to the Supreme Being himself.
The internet is full of people speaking about what the biggest issue plaguing black people in America are, right? I really been thinking about this question. I'm starting to believe lack of sexual discipline is the core of our people's financial and familial problems. What are your thoughts about this?
Wow. That is definitely a component. And I will say this, that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that the root of our problem as a people is a spiritual problem that necessitates a spiritual solution. So when you take the concept of people that have accepted or taken their low desires as a God besides God, that is a spiritual problem. There are other ones that can be packaged with it, but at the root of our problem is a spiritual problem that necessitates a spiritual solution. There is a British anthropologist by the name of John D. Undum, and this man did a study of 80 nations over a 4,000-year window of time. And he studied the rise and the fall of these 80 nations that have existed in the last 4,000 years. You won't believe what he found. He said this, that nations that were engaged in premarital sex and extramarital sex were nations that were weakened, destabilized, and ultimately destroyed. The nations that were able to thrive, be creative, transition over cycles of time, and remain in existence and powerful were the nations that had the greatest discipline in the sexual world. So what you're saying, Brother Lynn, it has some weight to it. For him to be able to study that, I said when I got finished reading the report that he made about Rome and Babylon and these different nations, I said, so I see what's happening. Anytime you got a nation where everything goes, that nation will soon be gone. And do you know that if you were to take the template of Sodom and Gomorrah, ancient Rome, Babylon, or any of the other 77 other nations that this man studied for this time period, if you were to lay them over top of America and the way America operates, America is practicing all of the low lifestyles of all those nations put together with some new ones added to it. So America is on her deathbed right now. And part of it, yeah, America does have a skin problem, mistreating black people with black skin, but America also has a sin problem. And these two problems are what is going to cause America to be wiped off the face of this earth as a superpower and a nation. The skin problem, the mistreatment of black people, the people of God, and the sin problem, the violation of the laws, rules, statutes, and commandments of what makes a nation survive and thrive. America's in violation of all of the commandments of God. And they don't just allow, it promotes the madness. And there will be a great suffering because of it, like those other nations that fell in the past. So you're not far off with that. And I'm saying to us as a people, we have to, from here on out, when we talk about unity, we have to talk not just about the horizontal unity, brother to brother, sister to sister, brother to sister, or sister to brother. We have to also talk about the vertical unity. And that's us not just united with each other, but us united with principles of truth, with character, with morals. And if we can connect to each other, but we're not connected to morals on a vertical level, we won't be able to remain connected to each other. How can I stay in unity with a pedophile? How can I stay in unity with somebody that's going to steal? How can I stay in unity with somebody that's going to lie, that's going to backbite, that's going to slander and gossip? So we as a people, if we're going to have unity that's successful, it can't just be this horizontal unity, brothers and sisters to one another. We have to also make that vertical unity with God Himself and begin living a moral life. And by doing so, being united to the principles and the character of God and united to each other, we'll be great and we'll be successful. And who knows, we might inherit this promised land called the United States of America. We built it. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, once when he was in a plane looking over, he seen it. He said, this is ours. This is for us. So, that's something that we should consider. Your point is very much on point. There may be a few other things to it, but it is true. Anytime you see sexual promiscuity, premarital sex and extramarital sex in a nation, as John D. Undum found, 80 nations studied over a 4,000-year cycle, all of the nations that had weak sexual discipline end up becoming a weak nation that eventually fell off the planet as a nation.
I want to discuss the process of moving from spiritual illiteracy to spiritual literacy, right? And what I mean by that is that transition from being impatient with yourself and others and the universe to be impatient with yourself. Discernment, right? Growing from being a hearer. This is one I really want to talk about, being a hearer to a listener. I think too many people hear, but they don't listen, especially in regards to listening to the spirit, faith, and trust. Those are the things what I mean in regards to being spiritually literate.
Well, it starts on this level. We cannot allow our self-image or any other perception to be shaped by non-scriptural concepts. That means that whatever God said about you, it is true and you should accept it for yourself. If he said you are in the image and we are in the image and the likeness of God, that means that everything that's true about God is true about us. If we're in the image and the likeness of God, we're not a duplicate of God. We are a replica of God. Duplicate can look like, but a replica doesn't just look like, it has the power and the function of. If we are in the image and the likeness of God, that means that every time God looks at us, he sees himself. Problem is, when we look at ourselves, we don't see God, but we should. When you accept that as your self-image, and then you don't allow any other perceptions to be shaped by non-scriptural concepts, then you are practicing, or you are one that has spiritual literacy. Do you know that there's a man named, two men, one was named George and Jim, but I'm trying to remember the last name of these gentlemen, but they did a study in the early 2000s on something called biblical literacy. And this is their finding, that the Bible is the #1 selling book in America every year. There's no book in America that is more prominent than the Bible, and there's no book in America that's given away more every year than the Bible. But in spite of the Bible being so many places and #1 seller, #1 book in population in America, they found that people revere the Bible, but they do not read it. So look at this. They start interviewing people, and as they were interviewing Christians, they found that 50% of the Christians they interviewed could not name the 4 Gospels. 60% of those they interviewed could not name more than 2 disciples. 12% of those they interviewed could not, they literally thought that Joan of Arc was Noah's wife. 40-some% of them thought that Sodom and Gomorrah were husband and wife of one another. And it's a whole lot more that they found. So what they came to the conclusion is that people revere the Bible, but they don't read it. I guarantee you that if we were to go and do this same kind of study that they did for the Christians in the Bible, we'll find that same scriptural or spiritual illiteracy existing among people of different faiths. People might revere their books, but the question is, are you reading the book? And in literacy, reading is only half of the equation for literacy. So reading is the ability to sound out letters and say the word, but the other side of literacy is called reading comprehension, meaning do I understand what I'm reading? And you don't know whether you understand something unless a person can prove that they know how to practically apply what they say they know. So spiritual illiteracy is, I'm going to step out there and say there's more spiritual illiteracy than there is literacy that
Facts.
exists. So a person is going to be impatient with themselves. They're going to be easily made to operate with poor self-worth, low self-esteem. It's going to be easy for them to see another female as a man, as a it instead of a she, or another male as a it instead of a he. It's going to be easy for us to operate without integrity and trust of others because we don't even trust ourselves. Why? We have allowed our self-image and other perceptions to be shaped by non-scriptural concepts. It's written in the book of Matthew 4:4, Jesus said this. He said, man cannot live off of bread alone, but off of every word that proceedeth from the mouth of the Lord. So the first phase of us becoming biblically or scripturally literate is we have to start feeding our mind what God has said, and then using what God has said to inform our self-image, and all other perceptions of life. And you'll find the minister described it like this. I was with him, Brother Linton. We were in Milwaukee, and he was doing an interview. And while he was doing the interview, I couldn't hear the questions that were being asked by the interviewer, but I could hear the minister's answers. So when he got off, he explained what they were asking. They asked him twice, what books do you read? What would be a good book to read? And he said, I didn't want to tell them that I don't really read books, because that's not, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told me that I didn't have to study, that God in him would feed me. So you heard me say, get Message to the Black Man, and another book by that same author, How to Eat to Live. Listen to these words though. He said, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told me this. He said 90% of the knowledge of this world, including the sciences, is falsehood. 90%. Then he compared the science, the knowledge of this world, he compared it to tap water, and he compared revelation that came from God to rainwater. You know from having a lawn or a garden that 8 minutes of rainwater will do more for your lawn or your garden than 8 hours of water hose, sprinkler, tap water. Right. Why? Because the tap water has too many negative poisons in it, and the rainwater is water that was pulled up by the magnetic appeal that the sun and the moon have on the earth's water, pulled up into the atmosphere. It gathers 6 miles above the earth's surface, forms what we call a cloud, and when the cloud becomes heavier than gravitational pull, that water begins to distill back to the earth in the form of rain. But while it was up there as a cloud, the 14,072 degrees of heat coming off the sun was purifying that water. So the water that went up was cleaned up, and when it comes back as rain, it's a better version of water than even what came out of the lakes, rivers, and streams of the planet. So it is with revelation. So it is with spiritual knowledge. It's rainwater for growth and development. When it comes to the empirical knowledge of this world, even science, that's like putting some tap water on your grass. It'll do a little something, but it's not going to match that rainwater. So we should never put speculation in the same category as revelation. One's tap water and one's rainwater. Get you 8 minutes of some spiritual wisdom, and it'll do more for your growth and development than 8 hours of your favorite YouTube clip from doctor and scientist speculation supreme. Get revelation over speculation, and you'll find growth and development will be a lot better, faster, and easier for us.
I know you have experienced many letdowns and heartaches throughout your life and continue to rise and live in your purpose. Why do you believe you have not quit on yourself like so many of our brothers and sisters when life gets hard? Quitting on yourself now. That's what I said, quitting on yourself.
Well, it is, again, I kind of, when I put that in the atmosphere about not allowing your self-image or any other concept or perception to be shaped by non-scriptural concepts, there's a verse in the Holy Quran that says that Allah is He who takes souls by night. And whoever the decree of death has not passed, He returns their soul, in other words, for them to live another day. This means that if we woke up this morning, that's a sign that God still believes in us. So if God still believes in us, who are we to disbelieve in ourselves? And I say this, the minister said this one day. He said, the more sincere the motive, the more sustained the action. So whenever what you do is purely and sincerely motivated the actions will be more sustained. In fact, the base word of motivation is motive. So motive gives you motivation. Your why power really fuels your willpower. The reason why we do what we do provides fuel to our desire to stay continuously doing what we do. So I don't think that it's me thinking something special of myself that keeps me moving. I'm striving. I believe I have a sincere motive, and that motive gives motivation. I believe that my why power fuels my willpower, and it keeps us on the battlefield. And of course, I always tell myself that greater than me have gone through worse, and they kept going. So you shouldn't use your little suffering as a justification for punking out or quitting. No, look, wherever success is, sacrifice was. And pain is the universal language that everybody that you ever talk about that ever achieved anything has in their vocabulary at the top of the list. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said to us, he said, pain is the mother of growth and change. So most of the time when people do quit, they quit because of discomfort. They quit because they're tired. They quit because it hurts. Well, if pain is the mother of growth and change, then whenever pain shows up, you shouldn't say that's a cause to quit. That should be a sign that you're growing, that you're changing. So that's a good sign. And I strive to live that. And again, I have in front of me such a example. Look at the minister. He's been on this battlefield now for 69 years. Unbought, unbossed, and unbothered by anything that goes on in this world. So that is a man that I signed on to help. And I cannot give up on him or us. And if that means I can't give up on myself to make sure the us and the him are not given up on, then I can't give up on me either. I believe that if we wake up, that is a sign that God still believes in us. So if God still believes in you, who are you to disbelieve in yourself? Keep on pushing. Don't look, the Lord of the worlds doesn't wait for perfection to reward you. He rewards you just for making progress. So even when we make a mistake, we have in our code that mistakes shall not exist in the Nation of Islam. It don't mean they won't be made. It means that when we make them, we're going to learn from them and they won't remain in existence after we make the mistakes. So I have a saying. I say, look, new mistake next time. So whatever happens, new mistake next time. What does that mean? That means that instead of letting a failure or something that didn't go well hurt me to the point that it makes you want to quit, if I'm saying new mistake next time, I'm anxious to get back to that challenge, back to that trial again, so that I can prove to my God and myself that I have learned the lesson. This also, it helps me out, and I hope it will help those in your great viewing audience. Remember this: never let success or praise go to your head, and never let criticism or failure go to your heart. And if you operate where when you are successful or someone praises you, you don't allow it to go to your head and make you think more of yourself than you should, and whenever failure comes or criticism comes, you don't allow it to go to your heart, then you'll never be too high up and you'll never be too down. You'll be right there balanced, ready to keep moving forward and upward. I hope that helps the viewers. I know it's been some axioms and principles that have helped me, but keep on pushing. If you woke up this morning, God still believes in you, who are you to disbelieve in yourself?
Brother Muhammad, I have to thank you. It's always a pleasure to reason with you, and
My
we give
honor,
thanks for
my
your time
honor,
and your
sir,
wisdom.
my honor. Thank you all so much for blessing me with another opportunity to be in good company with good brothers trying to do a good work for people that are good people that just happen to have bad habits.